Welcome to We're on ECMO, a new video series for the ECMO community where I ask an ECMO question to an ECMO expert and get a 2 to 3 minute response. Joining us today is Miss Shanna Seigel. She's been an ECMO specialist for 26 years and is part of the education team here at ECMO Advantage. Shanna, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on your show.
How do you go about getting air out of the circuit? That's the question today. How do you go about getting air out of the circuit?
Okay. Well, one of the things we like to always say here at ECMO Advantage is it depends. So what that will depend on is the type of ECMO system that you have, what your circuit configuration might be, what your practice is at your institution, and then also whether or not it's a small amount of air or a large amount of air. So for today, I think I'll just focus on the small amount of air, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And we can talk about the others another day if you'd like. So we want to recognize that it's a small amount of air, and we want to recognize that it's in our system. And I'll talk more about that in a second. And then once we've identified it and gotten it out, then we need to figure out what the source was. So we'll drill all those down, and I'll back up now just to the part where we need to recognize that it's in our system. So that could be different depending on what your system is like. If you have a venous air detector on your ECMO system, that will be the first indicator that you have air. But these days, most of us are using centrifugal pumping systems, and the first recognition that we have is when the air actually gets in your pump. It kind of makes a sound like if you were frying bacon in a pan, or if you take your hair next to your ear. Your hair isn't long enough, but you can borrow mine if you want. Yeah. And kind of wiggle it. It makes a little crackling noise, and that's how it sounds when it gets in your pump head. Mm-hmm. On a centrifugal system. And so then you've recognized that you have air in your system. Of course, that gets everybody's attention. We all look at the pump, and simultaneously then you're going to do several things. The first thing you're going to do is call for help. The second thing you're going to do, let me back up a second. I'm going to talk today as if I'm using the cardio help system. So as I mentioned, everybody uses a different system and configuration, but I'm going to refer to the cardio help. So we hear the air, we look at the pump, we call for help, we remove the cap off the de-aeration port, and then we slow the RPMs, ensuring that we have forward flow to our patients still. And then we would grab a syringe or two and put them on the circuit, connect them to air pigtail, pigtail where you can pull air off of the circuit and assist that de-aeration port. Mm-hmm. So then I would like to just, if we have time, drill those down a little bit more.
Yeah, go for it.
So calling for help looks different everywhere as well. Some places I work, we have a staff assist button, which is sort of like a step down from a code blue button, where you just press that button and all the people who you will need will show up in the room to help you. It could be I have to ask my bedside nurse to call a pre-designated number that we have posted on the wall. Or it could be that my bedside nurse is an ECMO specialist herself or himself, and they can help me with the ECMO emergency, and then the charge nurse could come into the room and fill that role that they were doing for the patient during the ECMO emergency. So then removing the cap, the way that functions, as long as you have forward flow pushing pressure through your system, it will force the air up the preox side of the oxygenator and out that de-aeration cap. So like I said, you need the positive pressure. If you have no flow, that's a different situation and not what we're talking about here today. I will note that in smaller patients, that process might look a little bit different because while you have air in your system, that air is occupying space. And so as that air comes out, that space will be filled with fluid drawn from the patient's body. And if it's a small patient, you may have to replace that fluid with some volume replacement. Larger patients probably won't even notice. Decreasing the RPMs. The reason that we do that is because we want to slow the forward flow to avoid pushing that air that's on the venous preox side to the post-ox arterial side, because then it becomes what we call the dreaded arterial air embolism. So that's what we're trying to avoid. That's also why, to the next step, we have the syringes on the circuit. I like to put one on the preox pigtail and the post-ox pigtail. I know that my air is a small amount. It's isolated on the venous side. I'm helping the deaeration port de-air that by pulling it up in my pre-ox pigtail syringe. But I'm also looking at the post-ox side of the oxygenator all the time and being prepared to pull air off there if it were to travel across the oxygenator. So then to recap, just to make sure we're all clear, simultaneously, you're going to call for help. With one hand, you're going to remove the cap. The other hand, you're going to start to slow your RPMs while you're ensuring forward flow. And then you're going to grab your syringes and assist on getting that air out. So air's gone, your problem's solved, right?
Not quite, right? You
Not
want to know
quite.
where it came from.
That's right. We need to know where it came from. So hopefully your help has arrived by now, and you can task them with looking, or maybe by the time they get there, you're already looking. So you're searching from the tip of one end of your circuit to the tip of the other end of your circuit. I have a friend here at ECMO Advantage who likes to say from the rooter to the tutor. We're going to look for a problem. So some of those problems that we might find when we're looking could be perhaps we have a cracked stopcock or a cracked connector on the venous drain line. Perhaps we have just cavitated air on the venous drain line. That can happen in a very negative drainage or negative siphon situation. So we're flowing at a high rate of flow and you're pulling really hard with that centrifugal system, creating a very negative venous pressure. You can cavitate air and just cause that to happen. Perhaps somebody forgot to close the port on a central line or somewhere on the circuit, close the stopcock the incorrect way and it didn't have a cap on it. Your venous cannula possibly could have migrated out slightly, and one of the side holes could be either slightly out or very close to out, and with a very negative venous drain pressure that can just pull atmospheric air in along the side of the cannula and into the vessel and then into your circuit. We often have med lines connected to our ECMO circuit or connected to a central line. And so patients are getting a lot of medications. Those med lines don't always do the greatest job of keeping bubbles out. And so when bubbles get in, then they come to the circuit. So that could be an issue. Perhaps you have a CRT or hemofilter hooked up to your circuit, and that system entrained air that then is pulled into your circuit. And then the last thing I can think of maybe would be just a complete dislodgement. I doubt that would be a small amount of air. That's what maybe we'll talk about next time when we talk about a large amount of air. So a thorough search from tip to tip. If you don't find the problem when your help arrives, you ask them to look over from tip to tip and see if they can find the problem. I think that's
about it.
About the way that I handle it. Oh, one more thing.
Okay.
I do want to say. So if we found the problem and fixed it, or if we removed the air and couldn't find a problem, we oftentimes do just chalk it up to probably central line medication administration. But we do like to say, when in doubt, clamp out. You'll never be wrong if you do that. So if you get air and you're not sure how to handle it, even with these tips, clamp your patient out and get some help.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's a great answer. I know lots of helpful information for a lot of people out there. If you have an ECMO question that you would like to see answered, please make sure you email me, Neil, at ECMOadvantage.com. See you next time. Thanks.
Thank you.